The Mad God project allowed me to just make this more pure thing that was kind of a form of therapy for me. As an antidote to my day job, for a lack of a better term, it's a passion project. The brainchild of special effects pioneer Phil Tippett. There's no better way to describe the film that came to be Mad God, a film that was in the works for close to 30 years. Just think on that. A movie idea that has been in development far longer than I've been on this earth. Which, by the way, I just learned how to walk outside the other day. I think it went actually pretty well. But yet, how extraordinary is that? I mean, how did he not just jump ship and go, yeah, this ain't never coming out? And I suppose that this video is going to be about that. A celebration of a man who I find hugely fascinating. The passion project he saw to the end. And well, that sense of hope and inspiration of seeing through your pursuits, no matter how stark the journey seems. Stick with me on this one. This is going to be like one of those TikTok inspirational videos. Did you wake up today at 7 AM going, oh, I gotta go to work to see my boss? Get a hold of yourself, you little worm. But before we talk about this utter legend, I want to welcome everyone to my channel. Now, if this is your first time coming to the channel, hey, this is another venture into my video catalog. Hey, what's up? Be sure to leave a like and press that nice little subscription button. Yeah, you know that one. Yeah, just there. Anyway, I hope everyone's doing well, and I hope you enjoy the video as much as I enjoyed making it. So Phil Tippett's a pretty important person when it comes to the history of special effects. Most of you will probably be aware of him by his involvement in Jurassic Park as dinosaur consultant. Yes, revert your mind back to the meme days of 2015. That damn bloody dress. I swear, anyone who says it's blue. But yeah, Phil Tippett was responsible for handling the animation movement of the dinosaurs in Steven Spielberg's Jurassic Park, and had his hands in some of the most revolutionary special effects movies of the last 50 years. You know, Star Wars, The Empire Strikes Back, RoboCop, Starship Troopers, Dragon Slayer, Coneheads, the Twilight Saga Eclipse. But yeah, I can remember as a kid being transfixed by watching DVD copies of the remastered Star Wars original trilogy and being absorbed in the behind the scenes features, especially one that was on the separate disc of the box set. I can't remember the name of it right now. It was like a feature-length documentary. If you want to inspire your kids to get into filmmaking, definitely show them that video. And yeah, one thing I remember is the really serious-looking gentleman known as Phil Tippett explaining how the Empire Walkers, known as the AT-ATs, were brought to life by stop-motion animation. One of the most arduous and time-consuming, yet equally breathtaking, beautiful methods of animation. And well, that's where Phil Tippett's story begins, actually. Like many animators, as a kid, Phil was blown away by the work of the late Ray Harryhausen, a visionary of creature visual effects. But he especially had his heart close to one film, The Seventh Voyage of Sinbad. I saw it at the Oak Theatre on Solano Avenue in Berkeley, and it just completely changed everything. It zapped me like a bolt of electricity. I wasn't the same after that. I just couldn't figure out how these amazing creatures were brought to life, but I really liked it. His slice of education came through the pages of monthly American film monster magazines, which would detail how these film magicians would bring these creatures and characters to life. Just for your reference, it's using a camera and moving a figure a little bit to the left. So Phil started to make his own films, using what was at his disposal, saving up for a Keystone 8mm camera and fully articulated G.I. Joe figures. So yes, there was a point to the existence of the G.I. Joe films. Hell yeah! Phil continued to experiment and got in touch with a gentleman who actually worked within such animation. Phil got to work with him closely and actually became his protege. Tippett graduated from the University of California and went on to work for Cascade Pictures on commercials for kid-friendly products. At the time, there wasn't a big push for VFX-heavy movies as it was deemed too expensive. So animation studios actually had to work a lot within the medium of television. Through this, he met another veteran of animation, Dennis Muren, who you'll also recognize if you follow a lot about special effects in the early 70s and 80s, who told Tippett about a young upcoming filmmaker in the Valley who was looking to recruit a team of animators for his next ambitious project, an upcoming space opera titled The Star Wars. the man being a young devil by the name of George Lucas. Tippett came on board as the second unit for the creature crew of the film. Their big task, to populate the hive of scum and villainy at the Mos Eisley cantina scene, tasked with designing creatures that really pushed the concept of alien. Tippett began work on the alien masks and can even be seen on set disguised as a few of its occupants. Upon Lucas stopping by the animation department, he noticed Tippett's fondness for stop-motion animation. At the time, Lucas was struggling on how he was going to bring to life his idea for the holographic chess set on the Millennium Falcon. Originally to be done using live-action actors, this idea was thrown away by the release of Michael Crichton's Future World that included an exact live-action chess sequence. But upon seeing the rich animation possibilities of stop-motion, he hired Tippett and animator John Berg to get to work to redesign the concept. Funnily enough, this was so last minute, this was actually one of the last sequences to be completed, even going so far as to be worked on during the actual wrap-up party for the film. However, what they had made was truly something special. Bill later reflected, "I remember watching the dailies of the bar scene and the chess scene, and even though there was no tempo track and it was just production sound, we just immediately knew. You could just say, wow, this is the picture we've always wanted to work on since we were kids." And well, as you know, it was a huge success. That was in no small part due to the wonderfully talented animation department that would become Industrial Light and Magic. And Star Wars became the cultural phenomenon that is now being shredded through a wood chipper. Tippett went on to work on the sequel, Empire on Ice, which would require more of Tippett's talent with stop motion, with the creation of the Tauntauns and the Imperial Walkers. The Tauntauns proved to be especially difficult, with how they were going to capture fluid animation movements, along with a moving human on top. Tippett worked on developing a new variation of stop-motion animation, known as Go Motion, to create a less choppy looking effect for the animation and bring a more natural movement to the puppets. The model was fitted with rods attached to motors that recorded each movement on a computer to then reset to its original position and seamlessly move it across the table in one motion. This technique was used to also bring to life the Imperial Walkers as well. This motion technique will go on to be used for the dragon in the 1981 film Dragon Slayer, where Tippett would receive his first Oscar nomination for animation. He would rightfully be awarded his first Oscar with his next film, the concluding chapter of the Star Wars trilogy, Return of the Jedi, which he shared with Dennis Muren, Richard Edlund, and Ken Ralston. With this film, he was hired to lead the Lucasfilm team in charge of creatures, working on iconic monsters such as the Rancor and the Behemoth machine that would bring the character of Jabba the Hutt to life. But I've always thought, why don't they just cast Marlon Brando? Probably less money to use the animatronic, eh? But yeah, extraordinary physical creations. With the trilogy now coming to a conclusion, Tippett decided it was time to go and work on something much closer to his heart. To make this change, he left ILM to start his own company, Tippett Studios, with his wife Jules. He wished to develop a movie about dinosaurs, which he wanted to make for educational purposes. While his wish for it to be shown at schools may not have come to fruition, Prehistoric Beast, as it was later titled, was a huge success and was picked up by CBS to get a full-on documentary series titled Dinosaur, with Superman himself hosting the show and Tippett coming back to work on the series animation. But Hollywood wasn't too far behind, calling out Tippett's name to help assist in the science fiction world again with Paul Verhoeven's cult classic, RoboCop. He had to develop and design of the ED-209 robot. He would also work on the not as successful sequel. It was around this time that he started to come up with the idea that would eventually transition into Mad God. However, the biggest opportunity yet landed at Tippett's feet when it was announced that Steven Spielberg was wanting to adapt Michael Crichton's book, Jurassic Park. George Lucas, a close friend of Spielberg's, referred Steven to Tippett as the man to get in contact with due to his experience handling dinosaurs. Okay, that's enough out of you internet memers. Tippett went to work on developing a tech reel for Spielberg to prove the power of stop-motion animation would fit seamlessly with live action. But like many things in the Hollywood system, his dreams came crashing down. As at the same time, a few of his associates at ILM created test footage using then state-of-the-art computer-generated animation. And yeah, the rest is history. When Tippett was told that CGI dinosaurs would be the way to go instead of Tippett's stop-motion creations, Tippett rightfully became worried his profession was a thing of the past, claiming he had become extinct, which Spielberg charmingly responded with, "Yeah, I'm going to use that line in the film."
We're out of a job. Don't you mean extinct?
While Tippett stayed on in some capacity as the infamous dinosaur consultant, seeing to the realistic movement and behaviour of the CGI model dinosaurs, this was a clear sign of the animation style that he had loved so dearly was probably going to be a thing of the past. While it would have been easy for him to join his buddies in adopting the new technology, Tippett was not so embraceful of the new technology and really wanted to keep the art form he loved alive. Animator Joe Johnston once said, "Phil didn't care about the glory. Phil does it for the love of what he's doing." Just when he thought he should start packing his bags though, hope came over the horizon in 1995, when RoboCop director Paul Verhoeven approached Tippett to help him with his big-budget adaptation of Robert A. Heinlein's Starship Troopers, designing the marine dropships and most importantly, those bugs. And the best part, this was a great opportunity to not only have him work with practical effects and stop motion, but to practice with the new technology of CGI. He was so heavily involved in the effects for the film, he's actually credited as a co-director for the film. Like RoboCop, Tippett also came back to work on the sequel to Starship Troopers, this time directly taking the seat of the director's chair, which I claim I have not seen, but I've heard that's for the better. Tippett continued to work in special effects work throughout the 90s and 2000s on films like The Haunting, My Favorite Martian, Evolution, The Spiderwick Chronicles, the Twilight films, and even returned on Star Wars The Force Awakens and Jurassic World. Despite Tippett Studios finally embracing CGI as time went on, Phil has always remained rather removed from the Hollywood system, being quite critical of a lot of the Hollywood movies being produced, can relate, and really just taking on jobs to make ends meet, and to feel what he was truly passionate about. One project did remain locked up and untouched though, his incomplete passion project, Mad God. He had shot footage of it as far back as the 80s, footage which apparently can be found in the final film, but it was the good word of mouth from fellow friends of his that got him to consider bringing this mad project back into creation. With the help of Kickstarter and a loyal base of film fans, Tippett was able to successfully fund his vision in 2010 of a Paradise Lost / Dante's Inferno stop-motion nightmare, and the final result is certainly something. For those looking for a conventional narrative, Mad God is really hard to recommend. It's a highly abstract and subjective piece that does not spell things out for the viewer, and lacks, for a better word, a plot. This is the kind of film you would find in a museum as a video piece, throwing as much disgusting content at your face as possible. That being said, it is cinema in its purest form. Yes, I know how pretentious that sounds, but let me explain. Watching this film, this is clearly not made to please general audiences. It's quite clearly a labour of love. It's not made for any externally soulless aim of financial gain or critical acclaim. This is the antithesis of Star Wars. Perhaps Mad God is Tippett's way to reflect on his own values without studio interference. During its development, he said, "Mad God is a lot of things I'm not allowed to do normally." And even the film's biggest detractors can't deny this is not material that you would find in your typical movie. Monsters that are explicitly showing genitalia and excreting fluids from different parts of the body. Monster designs that defy logical comprehension. I mean, look at these things. A surgery scene that goes on for far too long. You may not like it, but it's Tippett's vision. Mad God is an embrace of the surreal and a dark creative mind, filled with strange creatures and landscapes that many mainstream films would never dream of exploring. And kinda love it for that. Phil Tippett said with Mad God, it doesn't have any logical meaning to it. It's more kind of tone for me. It's a little bit like a novel. A writer writes this thing, and unlike a movie being laid out for you, the reader completes the picture. Everyone is seeing it different. Well, I think that's a bit of a generalization of movies. I agree with this audience have to fill in the blanks like a novel. And that a film using stop-motion animation, an art form that often is seen as a very childish animation platform, but that it's used in such a disturbing fashion is certainly something to be amazed at. I'm not really interested in getting too far into the meaning behind this film, as many videos on YouTube have already done this for me, but that it invites different interpretations is something to admire about it. And then it made me think, this film that I had just watched, this took 30 years to make. And while yes, it does have its fan base and has been critically acclaimed, you're not going to hear about every Tom, Dick and Harry talking about it. It's not going to be talked about like the Super Mario Brothers movie, which, I mean, comparatively, how long do you think that took to make? Maybe 2 years? How many people in the world are really going to care about Mad God? Care about a film that took 30 years for the man to make? And then I thought, well, for Tippett, it doesn't really matter. He made it. He got through the trials and tribulations of making such a movie. He got a bunch of creatives to embark on a quest and trust in making his passion project. And while the end result, yes, can be analysed and criticised as much as the next Marvel movie, that he came out of it with his vision intact, it's an extraordinary feat. Yes, it's sad to hear he had to go temporarily into rehab finishing this film. Yes, it's sad to hear he hasn't made much money from it. But this is undoubtedly Tippett's passion project. In a world where the incoming cinema lineup is looking pretty dire for original game-changing experiences,
it does look like shit.
A film like Mad God is a real standout. First, with this video, I wanted to pay tribute to a man that I really do respect within the field of special effects. And I want to thank him for the impact that he's had on my love of special effects and cinema. That first time watching the Imperial Walkers in Empire Strikes Back, convincing audiences that fighting giant bugs really is a frightening vision of the future. Most importantly, he represents an artist that stuck to his guns, that wanted to keep his passion of moving G.I. Joe figures, shot for shot, as a method to bring to life the magic of storytelling. And it's really made me hopeful for the future of the creative industry, if there's more and more artists like this out there. Thank you, Philip. So yeah, that's my video. I hope you liked it. Hope that was a good way of introducing you to Phil Tippett. So much interested in breaking down this film, and while I have my criticisms of it, I really do admire this film for its vision and the work that it put in to make such a frightening world as believable as possible. Watch it if you want for some inspiration, and check out the documentary Phil Tippett's Mad Dreams and Monsters. It was a huge help for learning more about this guy, and also the Vice documentary on him, which I'll link in the comments below.